Chicago's history with organized crime is as layered as the city's skyline, but few figures have left a mark as indelible as Jeff Fort. Known for his charisma, cunning, and a reputation that inspired both fear and reverence, Fort's story is one of remarkable influence and devastating consequences. From his early days as a South Side youth to becoming the architect of one of the nation's most feared gangs, Fort's journey is a mix of ambition, violence, and ultimately, self-destruction. Early life and foundations of crime. Jeff Fort was born in Chicago, Illinois, a city that has long struggled with socioeconomic disparities in crime. Growing up in an environment rife with challenges, Fort's trajectory seemed almost inevitable. By the time he was 18, Fort had already co-founded the Blackstone Rangers with Eugene Hairston in 1965. This organization would grow into one of the most powerful and feared criminal entities in Chicago's history. Initially, the Blackstone Rangers were a loosely organized group of boys engaging in petty crimes. Their activities included purse snatching, shoplifting, and breaking into stores, crimes typical of restless youth in economically disadvantaged neighborhoods. Members ranged in age from as young as 9 to late teens. However, what set the Blackstone Rangers apart was the rapid evolution they underwent under Fort's leadership. Fort possessed a vision that transcended the small-time crimes of other street gangs. With his strategic mind and persuasive personality, he transformed a chaotic group of young delinquents into a structured organization with defined leadership and goals. The evolution of the Black P. Stone Nation. Under Fort's guidance, the Blackstone Rangers underwent a dramatic transformation. By 1967, just 2 years after its founding, the group rebranded itself as the Black P. Stone Nation. This new identity marked a significant shift from being a single gang to becoming a coalition of 21 smaller street gangs across Chicago. Each gang retained its leader, but operated under the larger umbrella of the Black P. Stone Nation, with Jeff Fort as the undisputed head. Fort's ability to organize these disparate groups into a cohesive network was groundbreaking. The gang's governing body, known as the Main 21, included leaders from the affiliated gangs who reported directly to Fort. This hierarchical structure gave Fort unprecedented control over an estimated 10,000 members, making the Black P. Stone Nation a formidable force in Chicago's criminal underworld. By centralizing power and resources, Fort turned what had been a fragmented group of street gangs into an organized and efficient operation. Gang rivalries and the rise of violence. The rise of the Black P. Stone Nation inevitably led to conflicts with other gangs, most notably the Disciples, led by David Barksdale. What began as a simmering rivalry escalated into an all-out gang war by the late 1960s. The South Side of Chicago became the epicenter of violent clashes, with shootings and stabbings becoming almost daily occurrences. Efforts to broker peace between the two groups were largely unsuccessful. Fort and Barksdale even met in person to discuss a potential truce, but the animosity between their factions ran too deep. Both sides had suffered significant losses, and the cycle of retaliation seemed unbreakable. This prolonged violence took a heavy toll on Chicago's South Side, leaving countless victims in its wake and further entrenching the gang's control over the area. One of the more disturbing aspects of the gang wars was the use of young recruits to carry out violent acts. Fort's strategy involved using teenagers, some as young as 12 or 13, to commit crimes. This tactic minimized the risk of legal repercussions for the gang's leadership, as juveniles were less likely to face harsh penalties. It was a grim reflection of how deeply entrenched gang culture had become in the community. Misuse of federal funds and legal troubles. The late 1960s brought increased scrutiny to the Black P. Stone Nation, particularly from the federal government. In 1968, officials launched an investigation into the gang's activities after allegations surfaced that a $900,000 federal grant intended for job training programs had been misappropriated. The grant was supposed to provide young people with opportunities to escape the cycle of poverty and crime, but there were growing suspicions that the funds were being diverted to support the gang's operations. The investigation culminated in a Senate subcommittee hearing, during which a high-ranking member of the gang turned informant. This individual revealed that the Black Pea Stone Nation had been using the funds to purchase weapons and finance other illegal activities. The testimony also exposed the gang's extensive control over its members and its ability to manipulate government programs for its benefit. Jeff Fort's own actions during the investigation further cemented his reputation as a defiant and uncooperative figure. When called to testify before the Senate, Fort refused to answer any questions. Instead, he casually stated his name and walked out, a move that resulted in charges of contempt of Congress. This bold defiance only added to his mystique, but also deepened his legal troubles, internal struggles, and paranoia. As law enforcement ramped up efforts to combat gang violence, internal tensions within the Black Pea Stone Nation began to surface. Fort's increasing paranoia led to conflicts within the gang's leadership. He became distrustful of even his closest associates, fearing betrayal and potential coups. This paranoia resulted in a series of violent power struggles that further destabilized the organization. One particularly notable incident involved Paul, a high-ranking member of the gang who publicly severed ties with the Black Pea Stone Nation. Paul accused Fort of threatening his life, a claim that shocked both the gang and law enforcement. Shortly after making these accusations, Paul was murdered, fueling speculation that Fort had ordered the hit. Other members who attempted to leave the gang met similarly violent ends, illustrating the high stakes of loyalty and betrayal within the organization. The birth of El Runk. Following his release from prison in the early 1970s, Fort rebranded the Black Pea Stone Nation once again, this time as El Runk. This new faction adopted a more religious and militarized ideology, with Fort positioning himself as both a spiritual and criminal leader. The shift created a divide within the gang, with some members remaining loyal to the original Black Pea Stone Nation and others embracing the new direction under Fort's guidance. El Runk became even more organized and dangerous than its predecessor. The gang's criminal activities expanded to include drug trafficking, extortion, and arms smuggling. This increased sophistication caught the attention of law enforcement, leading to a series of raids that uncovered stockpiles of weapons and further solidified El Runk's reputation as a major threat. Ties to international terrorism. The early 1980s marked a turning point in Fort's criminal career. El Runk began forging connections with the Libyan government under Muammar Gaddafi, a move that shocked law enforcement and the public alike. Fort and his associates were accused of plotting terrorist attacks in the United States in exchange for $2.5 million from Libya. This partnership pushed El Runk's activities to a new and dangerous level, blending domestic criminality with international terrorism. Federal investigators uncovered wiretaps and recordings that revealed Fort's direct involvement in these plots. Evidence showed that he had been communicating with Libyan officials to plan attacks, a revelation that led to widespread condemnation and swift action from law enforcement. Raids on El Runk's facilities uncovered sophisticated weapons, including those capable of penetrating military tanks, underscoring the severity of the threat. Arrest, conviction, and legacy. In 1987, Jeff Fort's reign came to an end when he was convicted on charges of conspiracy to commit terrorism and other crimes. He was sentenced to 80 years in federal prison, effectively dismantling El Runk as a major criminal organization. Many of the gang's members were arrested, and the once powerful group splintered into smaller factions. Fort's story is one of ambition and tragedy. His ability to rise from the streets of Chicago to become one of the city's most feared figures is a testament to his charisma and strategic mind. However, his descent into violence, corruption, and terrorism ensured that his legacy would be one of infamy. Impact on Chicago's gang culture. Even with Fort behind bars, his influence on Chicago's gang culture persists. The splinter groups that emerged from the Black Pea Stone Nation and El Runk continue to operate in some capacity, perpetuating cycles of violence that have plagued the city for decades. Fort's story serves as a stark reminder of the far-reaching consequences of unchecked power and the devastating impact of organized crime on communities. And that's the wild story of Jeff Fort, from the streets of Chicago to the halls of infamy. If you enjoyed uncovering this tale of power and downfall, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into untold stories. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload.